Hi, my name is Taylor Bree-Casey and I'm the Communications Manager here at Munro. Today I am joined by one of our climate co-leads, James Tsinidis, who leads our climate strategy. James, it's lovely to have you.
Taylor, thanks for having me.
So James, can you remind us on how Munro sees the decarbonisation investment opportunity?
Yeah, thanks. So we obviously see this occurring over the next sort of 20 or 30 years as the world basically spends on decarbonisation. We think it's going to cost about $50 trillion to be conservative, and that's obviously a very, very large amount of money. We think it'll touch numerous parts of the economy and numerous sectors. So everyone obviously thinks about EVs and thinks about renewable energy, but that's only a portion of the money that we think will be spent. We actually think about 25% will be spent on energy efficiency. So it's retrofitting buildings like this one, which touches a lot of older industrial companies. Beyond that, obviously, we do still see a lot of spending going into EVs. So that's about 20% of the spending, further 20% on basically shifting from fossil fuels to renewables. But then beyond that, a whole bunch of different areas like charging networks, batteries, etc., which are smaller in size. But long and the short of it is, it will touch a lot of parts of the market, a lot of sectors, and a lot of parts of the economy. And we think it'll be, as I said, almost a 30-year, or beyond even a 30-year tailwind, assuming that we don't get to net zero by 2050, which is unfortunately probably a pretty decent bet given some of the big economies don't actually have net zeros and net zero targets until into 2060, like India and China, for example. Just as a reminder, we don't think that this is completely reliant on governments and government subsidies, although that obviously is a part of the story. Broader than that, it's actually the corporate spending that we see. Everyone is aware that the big tech companies, for example, are going to net zero. So they're big drivers of this change. And that's obviously not because of their governments telling them to decarbonise, it's actually because of their stakeholders, their employees, their customers, their investors and so forth. And then beyond that, we actually think that the share market and the investors themselves are a big driver of change as well because of funds with ESG overlays and net zero ambitions themselves. So we actually think that there's those sort of three tailwinds for growth. So there's the government's going to net zero, there's the corporates going to net zero, and the investors going to net zero. And that's those sort of three areas do reinforce themselves over and over.